My family mocked my car hobby and told me I'd never make it. Now I run the most successful shops in the city, and when they tried to use me for free repairs, I had one savage response. The voice stopped me cold. I was mid-sentence, explaining to a customer why his BMW 5 Series was making a noise like a dying blender when I heard it, deep, practiced, and just dismissive enough to make my spine tense. I assume you'll do the right thing for family. I turned and there he was. Leonard Shaw. My father. Tan blazer, boat shoes, sunglasses indoors. Behind him, my mother stood with her arms crossed, clearly regretting stepping foot in a place that smelled like rubber and hard work. My younger cousin Alex trailed behind, glancing around my shop like it was an alien world. And parked right outside the service bay? A Range Rover Sport. 2020 dented in the rear quarter panel with a transmission that had clearly seen better days. That was the car? That was the ask? No, hello. No, it's been a while. Just this. You'll do the right thing. Let me back up. This shop, Shaw Performance Garage, is my dream. Took me 12 years to get here. I started with a tiny 2-bay unit across town that reeked of mildew and desperation. Now I own 3 locations, each one fully staffed, certified, and trusted by everyone from local cops to semi-pro racers. We've got 24 clients booked out for weeks and an Instagram page that's turned more than one gearhead into a loyal customer. And yet, none of that mattered when Leonard Shaw walked in. Not the gleaming epoxy floors. Not the spotless tool racks. Not the Tesla up on lift 3 or the Porsche being ceramic-coated in the corner. To him, it was still my little car hobby. The last time we spoke, I was 24 and about to sign the lease on my first location. He told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. You want to waste your degree on oil changes, he said. You think girls dream of marrying the guy who smells like brake fluid? I said nothing back then. I just walked away. And for the next 6 years, they stayed silent. No birthday calls. No congrats when I made the local paper for community outreach. No attempt to reconcile when my mom's sister told them I'd made something of myself. Until now. Now that their prized Range Rover is making grinding noises and the dealership quoted them $8,300. Now I'm family again. I glanced at Alex. Poor kid looked uncomfortable. He's 19, studying business like Dad always wanted for me. I wondered how much of this was his idea. I turned back to my father and said nothing. Just waited. He shifted, clearly not used to the silence. We heard this is your shop. Looks good, he added, with that subtle twist of sarcasm he always used when I got a B+ instead of an A. Mom spoke next. We figured it might be good for you, some exposure. Helping out family. Exposure. Like I was some starving artist they were throwing a bone to. Like I didn't have more 5-star reviews than half the shops in the city. I gave them a tight smile. Let me guess, I said, wiping my hands on a shop towel. You want me to fix it? Free of charge, because blood's thicker than gear oil. Leonard smiled thinly. Don't be dramatic. We're not asking for charity. Just family rates. There it was. That old feeling. Not rage. Not sadness. Just that dull, deep ache in your chest when someone you once begged to see you finally does, and only because they need something. I could feel the heat rising in my ears, but I kept my voice calm. Why now? I asked. 6 years. Not a word. And now I'm good enough to crawl under your Range Rover. He blinked. Once. Twice. Well, we figured this could be a way to reconnect. I wanted to laugh. Instead, I looked at Alex. Is this really for them? Or are you the one who needs the repair? Alex opened his mouth, then looked down. Guilty silence. Figures. Dad cleared his throat. So? Can we bring it around back? I paused. Not because I didn't know what I wanted to say, but because for the first time in a long time I realized I didn't need them anymore. The question hanging in the air wasn't whether I could fix the car. It was whether I should. I didn't answer them right away. Instead, I walked past the Range Rover, pretending to study the damage. Rear panel dented in, probably from backing into something they'll never admit. But the real issue? That whining noise coming from the transmission when I popped it into drive, classic sign of worn clutch packs. It was going to cost them. And they knew it. I said, circling back toward the service bay, I remember when I told you I wanted to do this full time. My mom stiffened. She must have known where this was going. I was 17. I just rebuilt my first engine, bare hands, no mentor. Remember that? Dad didn't respond. Of course he didn't. You told me nobody makes a future with greasy fingernails. And then you made me sell my project car to fund college applications I didn't even want to send in. Mom shifted awkwardly. We just didn't want you to struggle. I laughed. Loudly. Not because it was funny, but because that same recycled line had been their defense for everything. Struggle? Mom, I was working nights at Carter's Auto while taking business classes I couldn't stand. You didn't mind the struggle back then. Her face flushed. That's not fair. No, I said, what wasn't fair was you telling everyone at Christmas that I'd dropped out to play with wrenches. You humiliated me. Like I was some kind of failure. Dad stepped in, trying to salvage the pitch. All right, maybe we were harsh. But look at you now. Clearly, you figured it out. I folded my arms. You mean I figured it out despite you? It wasn't just about a transmission. It was about everything. Missing graduations because they didn't think a trade school mattered. Jokes at family gatherings about me smelling like motor oil. Never visiting once, even when I opened the second shop and made the paper. Now here they were, in my space, acting like all that never happened. They looked around the shop again, this time with the dawning realization that it wasn't just some greasy back alley garage. Polished floors. Branded uniforms. A calendar booked out for months. Industry certifications framed behind the front desk. They never saw this as real. Until they needed it. I looked at Alex again. The kid looked like he wanted to disappear. Alex, I said, do you even know what a transmission rebuild involves? He blinked. No. I turned to my dad. Then maybe you can explain to him why it's okay to ask someone to do $6,000 worth of work for free. That's when my dad lost his cool. We didn't raise you to be selfish, he snapped. And there it was, the pivot. When guilt fails, resort to shame. The same playbook dusted off and used again. I looked at my lead tech, Jorge, who was watching from behind a lifted Subaru. He raised an eyebrow like he was waiting for me to lose it. Instead, I just smiled. You didn't raise me at all, I said. You controlled me. Until I walked out. I turned and headed back toward the front desk, tossing the shop towel onto the counter. Here's how this works, I said over my shoulder. You want the job? You get in line. Pay the deposit like everyone else. Otherwise, good luck with the dealership. My dad opened his mouth to protest, but for once he had nothing to say. My mom took his arm and pulled him toward the door. Alex gave me a tiny nod as he followed. And just before they walked out, my dad turned. You'll regret this, he muttered. I didn't respond. But inside, something shifted. Because for the first time ever, I wasn't the one walking away with regret. The door closed behind them with a hollow metallic click that rang louder in my chest than it did through the shop. For a few seconds, I just stood there, staring at the faded sticker on the service bay glass, Shaw Performance Garage, EST 2012. 12 years since I'd scraped together every cent I had and signed the lease on a 900-square-foot grease box that barely passed inspection. Now I had 3 shops, 18 employees, a waitlist, and sponsorship offers. And still, a single visit from the people who should have believed in me first turned my stomach like I was 17 again. Jorge came over. They gone. I nodded. For now. You okay? I shrugged. I dunno. I should feel great, right? Like I won or something. But instead it feels like they just ripped open something I spent years stitching shut. He patted my shoulder. They didn't come here to apologize. They came to collect. Big difference. I wanted to brush it off. Go back to my workbench and finish the Miata rebuild I'd been pouring my energy into all week. But my head wouldn't shut up. All the old echoes came back, the sound of Dad muttering disappointment under his breath when I skipped law school orientation. Mom's passive-aggressive phone calls asking when I'd grow out of this grease monkey phase. The deafening silence every time I hit a new milestone they never acknowledged. And now they had the audacity to call me selfish? Maybe they didn't deserve the shop discount. Maybe they deserved to feel what I felt when I rebuilt my first car alone in a friend's shed because no one in my family wanted to lend me their tools. Later that night, I closed up early. Didn't say much to the crew. Just nodded, grabbed my keys, and left. I didn't go home right away. I drove. To the old spot. The one where I used to park as a kid just to stare through the chain-link fence at an abandoned auto yard. It had been turned into a big box gym a few years back, but I still parked outside it sometimes when I needed to think. I sat there in my '89 Mustang, the same one I'd bought for $700 off a guy who thought it was junk. The one I spent 2 years rebuilding by flashlight and hope. The same car my dad once called a rolling waste of tuition. It purred like a dream now. Every bolt and wire had my name on it. And yet here I was, back where I started, trying to figure out if doing the right thing meant doing what was kind or doing what was finally fair. The truth was, I didn't hate them. Not really. But I hated what they'd turned my passion into, something to mock when I needed them and something to exploit now that they needed me. The question wasn't about a Range Rover anymore. It was about what kind of man I wanted to be when the people who never showed up suddenly came knocking. Would I be the bigger person? Or would I make them feel the weight of every slammed door and missed milestone they'd handed me over the years? I leaned my head back and stared at the roof of the Mustang. The same car that gave me my first real win. I'd walked away once. Maybe now it was their turn to feel what that was like. 3 days later, the Range Rover was back in my shop lot. Not for repairs. Just parked. Right in the customer drop-off zone, keys dangling from the ignition like some weird, passive-aggressive offering. And taped to the windshield? A note in my dad's handwriting. We trust you'll do the right thing. Family sticks together. No signature. No context. Just assumption scrawled in ballpoint. For a moment I stood there staring at it, half expecting cameras to pop out. Like it was some elaborate prank show where a smug host would jump out and yell, "You really thought they respected boundaries? Gotcha." But no, this was real. They had left the car here. Without scheduling service. Without approval. Without even asking. They were trying to force my hand. I looked around. My lot was already packed. Clients were waiting on work. We had a Tesla Model S with an electrical mystery, a souped-up Civic getting a turbo install, and 2 insurance jobs on tight deadlines. Every lift was booked. And they just dumped it here. Like I was still their kid, playing pretend in a dirty garage. Jorge walked up beside me, sipping his usual black coffee. They serious with this? I handed him the note. He read it, then let out a low whistle. Damn. Bold? I nodded slowly, something sour forming in the pit of my gut. They think if I just look at it long enough, I'll cave. He raised an eyebrow. You gonna move it? I didn't answer. Not right away. Because as much as I wanted to toss the keys in the trash and call a tow, something in me hesitated. What if I'd just fix it? Get it done, clean, professional, then drop a bill on their doorstep like any other client. But even that felt wrong. Like giving in to the guilt they'd always used as currency. That afternoon I called the dealership. Confirmed the diagnostics. Got a quote. $8,300. Plus labor. Then I added one more thing, a storage fee. $50 a day starting the moment they abandoned it. I printed the invoice. Folded it neatly. Taped it to the driver's side window right below their handwritten note. The next morning the car was gone. But the storm was just getting started. I hadn't even finished my morning coffee when my phone lit up with a ping so aggressive I knew it had to be family. Group chat, family updates, 2 hearts. A name I hadn't seen in months, my cousin Tara, of all people, kicked things off. Tara, hey, is it true you refused to help Uncle Marcus and Aunt Sheila with their car? What the hell, Eli? Then came my sister. Mel, seriously, dude? You left them stranded over a bill? And then my mom. Straight to the jugular. Mom, after everything we've done for you, Eli, this is how you repay us? Shameful. I stared at the screen like it was a foreign language. The kind where every word somehow meant the opposite of what it was supposed to. Everything they've done for me? You mean the time they made me take out loans I'm still paying off so they could buy a new kitchen? Or the Christmas they gave Mel a MacBook and handed me a reusable grocery bag filled with clearance socks? Apparently, Dad had told everyone I jacked up the invoice to punish them. No mention of the Range Rover being dumped without warning. No mention of the real repair cost. Just the usual twisted version of events where I'm the ungrateful one for not setting myself on fire to keep the family warm. I typed out a reply. Deleted it. Typed another one. Deleted that too. Instead, I took a screenshot of the dealership quote and the storage policy from my website. Dropped both in the group chat with one line. Here's the truth. But I'm sure it won't fit the story you've already decided to believe. Then I muted the thread. Because honestly, I didn't have the energy to argue with people who only remembered my number when they needed something. By the time I got to the shop, Jorge had already heard. You're famous, he said, tossing me a greasy rag. Half your family thinks you're a villain. I snorted. Only half. He grinned. Don't worry. The other half thinks you're a legend. But the texts didn't stop. Private DMs, voicemails from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Some subtle, some straight-up venomous. My favorite? A message from my Aunt Rhonda. Blood is thicker than water, Eli. Hope your fancy little garage keeps you warm when the family's gone. I almost laughed. Because what no one seemed to get, what they refused to get, was that I didn't feel cold. I had warmth. Every day. From the guys in the shop who called me boss and meant it with pride. From customers who brought donuts and coffee just to say thanks. From the Mustang waiting in my garage, purring like the day I built it. They thought I needed them to feel whole. But the truth was? I'd been whole for a long time. They were just finally noticing it and hating that it wasn't because of them. It was a Wednesday. Midweek quiet. Rainy enough that the day's schedule had thinned out, clients canceling, delays stacking. I was in the back office trying to reconcile inventory when Jorge knocked lightly on the door. "You've got a visitor," he said, voice low like he wasn't sure how to say it. I looked up. "Who?" He shifted. "Your sister. And Alex." My stomach flipped, not from anger, but something quieter. Heavier. I stepped out and there they were. Mel stood just inside the shop's front door, holding an umbrella and looking 10 years older than the last time we spoke. And next to her was Alex, my cousin, the same one who just last week watched my dad try to dump a car on my lap like it was still 2004. "Hey," she said, her voice unusually soft. "Can we talk?" I nodded, still not sure if this was another guilt trap or something different. We sat in the break room, mugs of burnt coffee between us, steam curling in the silence. "I just wanted to say," Mel started, "that I didn't know the whole story." "Not really." I raised an eyebrow. "Didn't stop you from jumping on the group chat pylon?" She winced. "I know. That's why I'm here." She glanced at Alex, who stared quietly at the table. Alex saw the invoice. The dealership quote. "Everything," she said. "He told me what really happened." I leaned back in the chair. "So what changed?" Alex looked up. "You did," he said. "I always thought you were just that cousin who liked cars. The black sheep. That's what they called you." "Still do," I muttered. He nodded. "But when I came here, I saw the shop. The crew. The way people talk to you? It's not what they told me. You built something real." He swallowed hard, then added, "I didn't know that was allowed, you know? That someone like us could do that." That hit harder than I expected. Because I remembered being that kid. Sitting in the back seat while relatives talked about the real successes in the family. Doctors. Lawyers. Engineers. Never mechanics. Never me. Mel reached into her bag and pulled out a check. Set it on the table. Full amount. No discounts. No assumptions. I told Dad if he wants the car fixed, he can pay full price or take it elsewhere. He's not happy. I smirked. "I bet." "But Alex wanted to come," she said. "He wanted to see what failing at life looked like." Alex grinned, sheepish. I tapped the check. "Tell your dad the Range Rover's off the schedule. We're booked for 3 weeks. Mel smiled, but I could see it in her eyes, relief. Like she'd been waiting for me to say that. Not because she expected a favor, but because she finally respected the boundary. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. It wasn't that kind of family. But when they left, Alex turned around at the door and said, "You're not the black sheep, Eli. You're the only one who got out." And I stood there in the quiet that followed, wondering when I'd stop needing that kind of validation and why it still meant so much to hear it. I should have known Dad wouldn't take the word no as the final answer. He never had. So when he rolled into the shop lot a week later, this time not in the Range Rover but in his older Benz, passenger door swinging open to reveal a guy in a blazer and loafers, I felt that familiar tension curl in my chest. Not fear. Just readiness. Dad didn't say hi. Didn't even ask for me. He walked straight to the front counter where Jorge was fielding a client. "Where's Elijah?" he asked, not even bothering to make it sound polite. Jorge gave me a subtle glance. I stepped out of the office. "Dad. Elijah." He said my name like it tasted sour. "We need to talk. Privately." I crossed my arms. "You brought a lawyer to my shop. That private enough?" The lawyer stepped forward, hand outstretched. "Mr. Shaw, I represent your father's interests regarding the Range Rover." I cut him off. "Let me stop you right there. That car was left here without a signed work order or communication. It was removed. End of story." Dad's jaw tightened. "You really think you're above your own blood now, huh?" "No," I said quietly. "I just think I'm done letting my blood take me for a ride." The lawyer cleared his throat awkwardly. "We're not here to argue. We're here to clarify that your father believes he has a verbal agreement, given family ties, that entitles him to nothing." I snapped. He blinked. I turned to Dad. "You want this to go legal? Fine. Let's make everything official. We'll pull up texts, emails, security footage, the original dealership quote. Hell, we'll subpoena the group chat." Dad paled a bit, but didn't back down. "Do you have any idea how petty you look?" he said. I laughed. "Petty? You dumped a car on my lot without notice. Tried to guilt me through the family. And now you're here with a lawyer because I sent you a legitimate invoice. I'm your father. And I'm your son. Not your employee. Not your ATM. Not your fall guy." The shop had gone quiet. My crew stood a little farther back than usual, but they were watching. And I didn't mind. Because for once, I wasn't the one hiding. I pulled out a folder from the front desk. The one I'd prepared just in case this went down. Invoices, timestamps, security photos, screenshots, all printed, organized, watermarked. I dropped it on the counter with a satisfying thump. You can take this, or you can take a walk. But either way, the Range Rover doesn't roll through these bays again. Dad looked down at the folder like it was a loaded weapon. Then he turned to the lawyer. Let's go. And without another word, he left. The bell above the door jingled as it shut behind him, leaving only the scent of rain and tension behind. Jorge exhaled. Well, that escalated. I didn't say anything for a while, just stared at the folder, and realized for the first time, I didn't feel shaky, or guilty, or unsure. I just felt done. And it felt good. Came 2 nights later. I was home, feet kicked up on the old ottoman I never bothered to replace, half watching reruns of Top Gear with a beer in hand when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally I'd let it ring out, but something made me swipe. No answer. Just a voicemail. I stared at it for a second, then hit play. It was my mom. Her voice was quiet, not like the sharp, judgment-laced tone I was used to. This was different, lower, strained. Eli, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I don't blame you. There was a pause long enough that I thought it cut off. Then, your father's been… Well, the lawyer thing didn't go over well. His boss found out he tried to involve company letterhead in a personal matter. They're investigating. And the stress. It's getting to him. Another breath. I'm not asking for anything. Just wanted you to know. He's not as invincible as he pretends. None of us are. Click. That was it. No, sorry. No, we were wrong. Just a sliver of realness from a woman who'd spent most of my life papering over the cracks in our family's foundation with guilt and appearances. I listened to it twice, then a third time, and I sat there thinking, was this it? Was this my chance to step in? Be the bigger man? Reopen the line of communication? The part of me that still craved something resembling parental warmth, approval, maybe whispered yes. But the part that had been left alone in that freezing garage at 16 with a busted Civic and a dream everyone called stupid? That part remembered. Remembered how long it had taken to dig out of that hole. How every bit of progress I made was mine and mine alone. I didn't call back. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn their respect, thinking it was the missing piece. But the truth was, I didn't need it. My worth wasn't waiting for them to recognize it. I'd already built it bolt by bolt, shop by shop, choice by choice. And this was my choice too. I stood up, turned off the TV, and walked out to the garage. There, under the soft glow of overhead lights, sat my first real project car. A 67 Chevelle SS. Faded cherry red, half restored, all heart. I slid into the driver's seat, ran my hand over the wheel, and smiled. A week passed. No word from my dad. No more messages from my mom. The group chat had gone eerily quiet, either because they were regrouping or because the latest family scandal had finally burned itself out. Either way, I didn't care. Business at the shop rolled on. Clients came and went, oil dripped and wrenches turned. And for the first time in years, I stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because I'd already heard the thud. Then came Saturday morning. Jorge was out front cleaning the windows when I saw him pause. A beat. Then he waved me over, his face unreadable. I stepped outside and there it was. The Range Rover. Parked across the street. Not on my property this time. No one inside. And sitting on the hood, weighted down by a spark plug, was a plain white envelope. I walked over, lifted it. Inside, a cashier's check. Full amount. Not a penny short. No note. No signature. No explanation. I turned it over. Checked for watermarks. It was real. Just a transaction now. Not a message. Not a guilt trip. It should have felt cold. Clinical. But instead, it felt clean. I walked back into the shop and set the check in the deposit tray. Payment arrived, I said to Jorge. He raised an eyebrow. From? I shrugged. Doesn't matter. Because it didn't. They'd crossed my boundary. And I'd held the line. And now? Now I was free. I spent that weekend repainting the Chevelle's hood. Took my time with it, sanding, priming, buffing every inch like it mattered. Because it did. It was mine. Always had been. And when I was done, I sat back, greasy and sore, and stared at it in the light filtering through the shop windows. No applause. No audience. Just me. And the car. And the hum of a life I built from nothing but noise, grit, and grit again. And in that quiet, I realized something. Sometimes the best kind of justice isn't loud or public. It's being able to sleep at night knowing you stood your ground. And no one gets to take that away.